for this session to continue, but we will now move into the live question and answer session with the audience. We just want to lay some ground rules before we take any questions from the audience. First and foremost, obviously, we are debating a very hot topic, so we'd like to emphasize to the audience members that whenever you do ask questions, please address the topic. No rudeness will be tolerated. The SC police are just standing over there, they will deal with you. And please, we have 4 panelists on the table. Last year we done an event on Proof of God. We had 2 panelists and we had a special guest appearance. So this year, to avoid the situation, we got 4 panelists. Just to remove the urge from anyone who wants to become a special guest, do a special guest appearance. So please keep your points very sharp, address it to the speaker that you want to address, and just raise your hand. Blue striped t-shirt.
Yeah. I have 2 questions.
We take one. Choose your best one.
Okay, I'll choose my best one. That is to the speaker from the Libyan Democracy Party. Looking at things that are happening in Occupy Wall Street, in St. Paul's, all over, don't you think there is a real need to rethink the way secular liberal democracies work, especially after you look at what's happened even in the UK, where the government admits that certain things have gone wrong. So there is a need to maybe rethink on these things. Are you all thinking about it, and what have you come up with it?
But you are asking a very confusing question. On one minute you're asking political questions, and then you're asking economical questions. There is yes. Can you define your question?
I'll clarify that. Isn't it both connected?
They are not.
So they are connected for the reason that if you go to St. Paul's and you talk to those people, they would say that they're necessarily raising an economic issue about banks, but also a political issue that the banks are controlling us. If you go to Occupy Wall Street, their main concern is corporations are funding Congress and not allowing the 99% to have the tax breaks, to have the... So it's economics and politics are interconnected. So I don't think you can say, well, it's economic, it's political. No, like church and state, no, economic politics go together. So I feel it's... So I'm sorry to take up your time, but...
No.
So I feel economics and politics are together. But if you look at society as a whole, economically, politically, and even in a spiritual, moral context, people are unhappy, people are unemployed, people feel unrepresented, they feel the marginalized 99%. So there is something...
I will give you a reply. Okay, in the Libyan model... No, I'll give you a reply. In the Libyan model, if I can borrow the words from a woman that recently, she had a facial transplant and she's waiting for a hand transplant. And somebody told her, how do you feel? She said, I know tomorrow is better than yesterday. So we in Libya, the way forward is upward. We have something in excess of 700 billion foreign investment, and we are going to utilize this wealth to rebuild Libya, to make Libya a modern state. So I'm not sure about how deep you want me to analyze the microsystem that we need to employ. We live in a capitalist system where cash is the king. Yes, we did have Najat al-Hijazi, Her Excellency, as a Libyan ambassador sitting on Human Rights Committee within the United Nations because of our money. And with our money, we will make sure we will buy the best processes.
The person at the back with the green jumper, yes? Yourself.
I've got a question for Dr. Wahid.
Go for it. Is it possible you can speak up a bit so that we can hear you?
Yeah, I can. You mentioned about if you ask a Muslim on the street, the 3 things that they would answer, one of the top ones is unity. And being a Muslim myself, I agree with that. But do you mean unity amongst Muslims alone? If so, what's the sort of, how does Sharia deal with globalization? Because it's something you can avoid.
Thank you. I mean, when I was talking about that issue, it was in a specific context to what Ahmed was saying about wanting to keep Libya as a nation state. Generally, the way I see it is within an Islamic state, citizens are citizens. Citizens are citizens. It doesn't matter what the religion is. Yeah, it doesn't matter what the race is, gender is. Citizens are citizens. And we hope that actually people feel the sense of citizenship, because that's actually the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ in terms of how government should deal with people. Okay? And when it comes to a state dealing with other states, you have to deal with other states like you deal with other states. You trade, you have, you know, diplomatic relations. You have this is the way states deal with other states. But I think, you know, I assume Nadim was making a joke when he says, you know, you're against the United Nations. Come on, nobody looks at the I mean, I really hope it was a joke. If Chatham House look at the United Nations with a rigged Security Council where a few countries in the world have a right of veto over everything else, that's deeply worrying, actually. Yeah? So I'm assuming it was a joke. You can't, I would be very happy if there was a genuine international body where different countries can come, yeah, including the kind of state I believe in, to discuss world affairs which cross borders. Yeah, I would love that. I would love that, to do with pollution and the waterways and these kind of things. It's a genuine thing. But as soon as one country, and actually HT have written about this, Dario have written about this in some of our literature, but as soon as you get a group of countries that wants to assume hegemony over that body and define it in legal terms, where rather than different states making treaties between each other, yeah, then I think you've got a problem, because you've got what is today's United Nations or what preceded that in the League of Nations. Yeah, so this is what I view on the issue of unity. I'm very happy with. I think it should be, the Muslim world should be engaged with the rest of the world, should be. But I have a problem when you're engaged on the terms of the current world order.
We take a question from the person far there.
Thank you, sir. I believe this gentleman was just before me. He got to the post first. Do you want to take my question? Thank you very much. I was fascinated by what Dr. Abdul had to say, and I can understand why people would be fooled very, very easily and captivated by his vision of a pan-Islamic world. It's a fascinating vision. And, you know, it reminds me so much of what Europe looked like when it was devastated by tyrants after World War II, by Franco, by Mussolini, by Hitler. What people yearned for was peace, security, and unity. But what they got was a totalitarian administration which did everything to coalesce and unify nation states. They wanted relationships, but they did not want to be bludgeoned into a forced European monolithic totalitarian state. And I feel that you perhaps should sometimes look at your own vision and compare it to what has come before. And often perhaps some self-questioning is what it was.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you for that very thoughtful comment. And I absolutely would agree. Self-questioning is a great thing. And it's a great thing. And the more we are faced with looking at how Islam would be appropriate in the modern day, the more you come to understand about Islam itself. Actually, so much of Islam is actually outside of the need of the state. The state is there. The state is there, government is there to do certain essential things. But actually, communities function on their own very much of the time. And I think one of the reasons why in Islam, for example, the laws concerning family and marriage and these kind of things are so strong is because so much of Islamic law, as it applies to us as individuals and families and communities, relies on us getting on and doing things and trading and looking after each other, etc., etc. And actually the state's role is to intervene at a stage when these things don't function properly. So the state's role is not to set up businesses as such. The state's role is to make sure, if you like, the market is regulated according to the laws of the Sharia, which are far less onerous and cumbersome than actually the laws, the market laws that actually exist, to patch up problems that we see going on now. Yeah. So, and I think your point is good and it's valid, because actually a lot of the time our group actually was started in the 50s, and the 50s was a time during the Cold War, ideas about capitalist vision for the world versus the communist vision, and of course the communist vision is a totalitarian state interventionist. The capitalist vision was never meant to be, but actually, as you rightly say, Europe has become absolutely, if not state-dominated, supra-state-dominated. And that's more about the execution of the system. The system itself very, very, very much relies on individual responsibility, family and communities, and then the states, the buck stops with the state on the essential things. That's the way it is. Actually.
Thank you very much for that response. We have a question from the person over there, and then take some more.
Can I ask one question? Is it possible to ask one question to one panelist and one question to another panelist?
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, okay. So I wanted to ask Ahmed, you mentioned this issue about taking the system from the West and they've advanced and so on, and then you gave the example of Eritrea and East Timor as countries where Western academics or Western thinkers have come in and reshaped those countries. But if you look at Eritrea today, it's a country that's suffering a lot of problems, actually. If you look at East Timor, it's a country that's suffering a lot of problems. If you look at Bosnia as well, there's still a lot of political tensions with systems that have come from outside powers determining how those countries would function. If you look at Western states, one of the things they've had, whether they have different values to the Muslim world or not, they've determined their own system from amongst their own heritage, their own people, their own values. So surely the remedy to have lasting institutions is to build those institutions on your own values and your own history, your own culture. So the same would surely apply to Libya and to the Muslim world, looking back to the Islamic heritage, looking back to the Islamic systems that were there before, and building for the current reality, the current situation today.
Okay.
And the other point I wanted to...
Let's take the second question.
I'll just answer your question.
Is it possible if we take the second question so that both panelists can answer it in...
I just wanted to ask a question to Nadeem.
Yeah.
When in your comments you mentioned this issue about ideas and ideas falling away, and I think you mentioned this point about cradle to grave provision in the Western world. But are you saying that the idea has become discredited and people no longer believe in it? Or are you saying people don't think it can be achieved by the current system? Because you seem to be bringing two things together which are different. There's a lot of people who think the way that the system is here in the West, it needs to be changed because it doesn't provide for what they want. It doesn't mean they've changed the idea of what they want. They've changed the idea about whether the system that exists is providing for what they want.
Thank you for this very thoughtful question. I would like to highlight that the Arab youth, and specifically if I describe the Libyan youth within our movement, have taken upon them to excel the Islamic interpretation of how we view the process of governmentship. The Wahhabi school has closed this jurisprudence 100 years ago, and alhamdulillah we have managed to improvise a fatwa. It is up on our website. It has been endorsed by scholars from Al-Azhar in Egypt, from Sultanate Oman and Kuwait, and I invite all the students here to read the fatwa where we derive the separation of state and religion. Our website is thedemocraticpartylibya.org, and we follow the Chinese example, which says that a long journey starts with the first step. Yes, the perfect vehicle has been built in East Timor and has been built in Eritrea, but you cannot blame them for having a bad driver. So it's up to us to refine the process. The British democracy did not reach this level of maturity in one day. It took them about 300 years from Cromwell time to reach this state of maturity, where everybody has the right to exercise his political right to say what he wants in freedom of speech, but you cannot do anything yet you want in democracy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The second question to Nadeem, you can answer it.
Yes. Right. Yeah, there's no doubt that we are witnessing a global crisis, which includes the crisis in the United Nations system and a crisis in the Bretton Woods post-war setup. But this does not mean that it is a joke to believe in a global system to regulate relations between states. And I also think that it is very wrong to divide the world into Islam and non-Islam. That I think is quite a dangerous concept. And you're not the only one. I mean, President Obama did it, and I thought it was wrong when he addressed when he addressed the Muslim world in Cairo. I thought it was wrong for him to address the Muslim world by defining himself as the non-Muslim world. That's the now. There is a crisis which is global. It is a crisis in the relation between the state and the individual. And I think my personal interpretation is that the system of the system where the state has so much power over the individual is on the decline. It's a system that originates in 1870 with it was the ideas originate with Bismarck, and it consolidated itself after the Second World War, and we are seeing the last bits of it. Now we're seeing the collapse of it. Now, of course, people are not demonstrating for the same thing, because again, people do not think in the same way everywhere. Not every Muslim wants this, not every Christian wants this, or every Libra or Aquarian wants this or that. People are different, they have different interpretations. Some of them interpret things wrongly, even if they believe in it. And this is what we're seeing. We're seeing a crisis where some people are asking for the old system to be consolidated. Some people are asking for it to be replaced, the Tea Party, for example. And some people are taking the bankers as the scapegoats and are occupying Wall Street and St. Paul's and all that. So there is a diversity in the reaction to the crisis, but it is nonetheless a global crisis between the relation between the state and the individual, and where it translates itself in the Middle East is also as such a crisis, and it's not to replace the state with another sort of totalitarian view that will solve it.
Thank you very much for that response. Blue Jack, over there. No, the person in front of you. So.
Mr. Shaybani, does he not find it of great irony and quite hypocritical that the man he personally thanks, Mr. Sarkozy, was a staunch supporter of Zinedine Ben Ali and his regime that led to the death of the man he says started and instigated this movement in the Arab uprising? And this leads me on to my next point, which is the man he champions the UN as fighting for freedom, and it's quite regrettable that actually in the video posted the uprising in Bahrain was completely overlooked. So my question to perhaps Nadeem, who's think tank, why has the uprising received very little media coverage, and Saudi-backed Wahhabi troops have been killing innocent doctors and Bahrainis all around the country?
Before we take the question, why was Bahrain neglected in the video? We were basically playing with time, and we had to basically fit all of our clips in a video, in a track. So sorry about that. But go ahead.
I agree with you. If I can add to it, why is Ahmadinejad photos from this poster? He should be included also, because I think the Arab Spring was started with the Green movement that Mousavi started. So freedom for those who quest for democracy, it's something universal. And regardless whether you are a Zoroastrian, whether you are Shia, whether you are Sunni, that you want to have your freedom, we champion all of this. And on so far as describing me as a hypocrite, I beg to disagree.
Thank you very much for that response. We're going to get the response from Nadeem, and then we're going to take another question.
I mean, the question for me was about the
Bahrain and why was it getting maybe
Yes, about Bahrain. I mean, we have.
Maybe a very quick response to it.
If you come to Chatham House meetings, you will see a lot of meetings on Bahrain, on all the crises in the region. But the fact that the UN has not acted on Bahrain is, of course, part of the anomalies of the UN system, and it hasn't acted on Syria either.
Yes.
And Yemen. So if a system fails in one instance or another, it doesn't automatically mean that if that system is weak, mine is correct, and I will propose a correct one. I think the system that we have, the international system, which is in crisis again, I would say, and we have an international law program at Chatham House, which does endless meetings on the reform of the UN system, and they published books and papers on that. But that's, I think, what I interpret the Libyans as saying, and the Tunisians and the Egyptians and all that, is that they want to be part of this civilized world. They're ditching a system which used to give them this specificity that we are different from the rest of the world. We don't deserve freedom. We don't deserve to have liberty because our leader knows best. I think this is the gist of it. They want to be part of the international, part of the universal values and part of the world with its problems. There's no perfect problem.
Okay, we're very quickly running out of time, so is it possible I could take maybe a couple of questions and get quick responses from the panel? I know...
Could you pick a woman this time? Huh? Could you pick a woman?
Yeah. Anyway, we will take a question today.
The question of America in all of this is they, after the Second World War, became a warring nation, and that's been the problem, and that's been the problem with the United Nations. But I think it's unfair to say that Europe hasn't helped the Arabs in their struggle. It is a struggle, and I understand where the Muslim side comes from, because that's your unifying factor, and that is your protection. But actually, don't make the mistakes that we in Europe made, and always allow freedom, the freedom of all, the love of all, to come through. Don't go down the ideological ways like Hitler and the Third Reich, which came from all this evil that can come from these secular movements.
Thank you.
Love is the main thing.
Thank you very much for your point. A quick response from Dr. Abdul Wahid.
Quick response. You're absolutely right. America turned outwardly, Truman Doctrine and everything after the Second World War. I would disagree with you on Europe, though. The history of European, especially the former colonial powers like Britain and France, over the last few decades, right up until Britain was selling, the number of arms Britain sold to the Gaddafi regime in the year ending September 2010 was $55 million worth. They spent $85 million selling equipment to the Khamis Brigade. And that's not the Blair government that receives a very bad press on this. This is including the current government. So it's wrong. The gentleman who mentioned Bahrain, it mentioned Bahrain, which is a loyal British ally.
The US Navy's there.
Well, the US Navy's there with all royal carpet treatment when he's slaughtering his own people and locking up doctors and nurses for treating people. Because you asked in a very respectful way, and I mean to answer respectfully, even if I might sound a bit passionate. I think this is what I mean about we have to look at the world as it is, not like we like it to be. The world as it is, Europe as it is, the United Nations as it is, this is not an anomaly of the United Nations. This is absolute consistency of the United Nations, where the interests of the dominant powers in the world are served best, the United Nations will act, such as in Libya, right? Because I think, Britain, America and France realised in backing Gaddafi, they were backing a loser. And they switched sides at a point at which they could have some credibility with the people afterwards and maintain some interest in the region. And the reason why they haven't gone into Bahrain and Syria is because they can't see a clear alternative to bring in that wouldn't jeopardize their interests in those regions. This is not anomalies in the UN. This is absolute consistency in the UN. It's not. I don't take any pleasure saying that. I don't. And contrary to what Nadeem says, our movement, I rejoice. I make prostration to God when I see these dictators fall. I'm not kidding you. The state in the world, the only state in the world so far where Hizb ut-Tahrir can fill up 100,000 football stadium on its own is Indonesia, so-called one of the freest Muslim countries in the world. The place where we have the most political prisoners probably is in Uzbekistan, in Central Asia, where Hillary Clinton was just last week, that great liberator of Libya. Hillary Clinton was going to negotiate with Islam Karimov last week, a guy who boils his prisoners alive. Why are we so big in Uzbekistan? Because when the Berlin Wall fell, and we were able to argue our case for what our vision is, and people can criticize us and ask us and challenge us and question us, we won support. And I don't say, we're not the dominant group in Indonesia, but boy, our work has flourished there. So please, I don't see this narrative that you say that we rely on the dictators. I'm more glad than anybody in this room, I think, to see the back of these people. I don't want these people. I'm happy that we have a society where because we were born in the 1950s where there was a vibrant debate in Bilad al-Sham, in Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, Jordan, in these places. A vibrant debate about the future. And it's only when our party started making some impact on the debate that the regimes there started banning us. So, look at the world as it is.
Quick. We're going to take three final questions, and we're going to pose it to the panel, and then we're going to have to call your end. So, the lady over there first, the lady behind you, and the guy with their hands up. The person sitting down, glasses, the one with back there. Yeah. So the three questions we're going to take, we take them in that order, and then we'll call you, and then, so you first.
This is for Dr. Wali. I just wanted to ask you if you think the Palestinians made a mistake by going to the UN to be recognised as a Palestinian state, and if you think that America has such a powerful presence in the UN, why is it that they got their statehood recognised despite the fact that UNESCO's funding has been cut
Thank you very much.
by 50 billion or million?
Thank you very much. The second question over there? Yes, yourself, second question?
Sorry, just a question to the organisers of the event, no disrespect to the panellists, but is there any particular reason that there's no women on the panel today?
Okay, yeah. I'll respond to that. And question number 3.
My question to Ahmed.
Can someone ask me a question, please?
My question is, you defended the Eritrean and the East Timor model by saying that you gave an analogy of a car and a bad driver. Couldn't the same be said of political Islam? I mean, you dismissed the Umayyads and the Abbasids out of hand. Why did you use this analogy to defend East Timor and at the same time dismiss the Umayyad and Abbasids? Why do you have to double stand?
Yes, when you have a ruling
is it possible I could first respond to our question and then let the panel do it? We actually did get in contact with a lot of female speakers, and Nicola Pratt from Windsor University. We got in contact with some female writers from The Guardian, but unfortunately they couldn't make it. We got in contact with 7 female speakers from SOAS. They could not make it. So I think the question is to be posed at them. I'll take the 2 questions, and I personally answer the question is that
I think I was brought in the last minute to replace the females.
I'll answer personal questions that obviously he's had experience from the streets of Tunisia. From your experience, what do you think what is the main call within Tunisia at the current moment?
I think the main call in Tunisia now is which we've seen on the 14th of October, this is less than a month ago, where people revolted again in the street, in thousands, in tens of thousands. They are calling for a non-secularist government. And I think this is to Ahmed here. Ahmed was telling us before we started that 3 weeks ago he was in Libya. I challenge you, if you met anyone in Libya who will agree with your ideas. Have you met anyone in Libya who wants a secularist state in Libya? The people of Tunisia went out on the 14th of October from north to south of Tunisia, calling, and these videos are available online. You can watch them. People are calling for Islam to rule in their country, and they have any intention of going to Kabul or Addis Ababa or anything. They want to stay in their country, and they want Islam to rule.
So we're running out of time very quickly.
I had a question put to me about the Palestinian. Yeah, I think that whole thing with Abbas going to the UN for recognition of statehood was more about boosting Abbas's credibility, and I think it would have been it was a mistake, because to recognise the borders of what is called the Palestinian Authority now as a state would be at the same time to recognise the borders of what they call now Israel, and I think that would be unacceptable. It would have been legitimising Israel. And at the same time, when I was researching to come on here, I just Googled Ahmed's name, and I'm interested to know that he found that Israel is the role model state of a secular state we would like to see. And there was an article he wrote, and you should Google the name and look it up, because if a corrupt state reaped up to its neck in corruption with an apartheid system is the role model, God help us.
Thank you very much, guys, for coming down today. We hope you enjoyed it.
Do I have the right to...
Oh, sorry. I completely forgot. Yeah, continue.
I would like to say that I have just been misquoted, and that is wrong. And
I'm sorry.
Can I
okay.
repeat my question?
No, I know your question and I know the answer. Are you ready to receive the answer? Okay. Excuse me?
Just so people know what you're going to respond, because I don't think people remember my question.
No, I know the question. I can repeat the question.
Go ahead.
Okay. The answer is that after Muhammad Bouazizi, from now on, nobody is going to sit on that chair only with the power from the people. Political mandate, you sit for a fixed term and you remove you from the time it finishes, which means that from now on, we in Libya, we want to address issues to do with women empowerment, human rights, and if the problem with people like you in Somalia or in Eritrea or in Indonesia that you cannot handle democracy, that is your problem. And with time you have to, because democracy is self-adjusted, you have to learn. Yes.
Guys, quiet down, please.
Yes.
Quiet down.
And can I say something? Yes, we in Libya see the only, excluding their internal problems and their security internal problems with the Palestinians, but the only functioning democracy in the region is Israel.
No, guys, thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming down. Please. No, sorry. No, hang on, guys. Thank you very much for coming down today. It's been a very controversial debate, but that's what we're all about. So thank you very much for coming down. You can feel free to leave. We're going to play the video for you. Take it easy.